Welcome to the webinar, Mitigating Non-Weather Water Risk. We have a great speaker with us today that has dealt with water losses firsthand. Rob Silva is the Director of Customer Success at Zesty AI. He's worked in the P&C industry for over 18 years, working as an actuary and state manager for companies like Farmers and MetLife. He's had responsibilities across the United States, overseeing over 30 states at various points in his career. And me, I'm Sam Fetchero. I lead the marketing and product marketing functions here at Zesty AI. My background is in risk. I worked for 7 years at Capital One, where I developed consumer and small business credit models. And since then, I've led marketing teams at Microsoft and various fintech startups. Let me share a little bit about we at Zesty AI are so passionate about this topic. We're a property and climate risk analytics platform fueled by the power of data science. Our team of brilliant data scientists and engineers apply sophisticated AI and machine learning to vast data sets. When people think about property analytics and AI property analytics, they probably think about aerial imagery. And we work with all the top aerial imagery providers and incorporate that data into our models. But one of the key differences of Zesty AI is that we go beyond imagery to extract data from building permits, property transaction history, along with climatology, water distribution networks, historic losses, and more. We'll talk about the value of these unique data in just a bit. We take these hundreds of billions of data points and use them in cutting-edge models that predict and prevent losses from major threats outside the home, like wildfires and severe storms. But today we're talking about interior water. And last month we launched Z-Water, our first product that goes inside the home to predict losses from the interior. Our solutions empower insurance carriers to face their biggest challenges like interior water head on. We help them write new business with precision, refine their rating models for fairer pricing, and optimize their portfolios for greater resilience. So here's the agenda for today's webinar. I'll set the stage and share some industry statistics about the size and scope of non-weather water and weather water losses and the troubling rise in severity. Then I'll share findings from our homeowner survey, where we surveyed over 250 single-family homeowners on their experience with interior water damage and prevention. And then Rob will showcase what we've learned as we've applied AI to this peril and some strategies you can take away for your business to approach this peril. And finally, we'll save time for Q&A at the end. So how big of a problem is water damage? We pulled the SURF filings from some of the top national carriers and broke down the composition of their base rate by peril. These were homeowners rate filings, and our presentation today will focus on personal lines. There are some different drivers for commercial, so we'll cover that in a future webinar. For homeowners, it wasn't surprising to us that attritional fire was number one. Hail and wind were in the top three, and then those were immediately followed by non-weather water. So non-weather water is a top 4 peril based on how carriers are rating for it. And not far behind is number 6, weather water. When you look at that peril right in the middle, hurricane, it's a primary peril and it seems to soak up a lot of the media coverage and focus. But these two perils, non-weather water and weather water, combined basically make up 2 hurricane seasons each year for carriers. So this is a good time to pause and hear from you. This is our first polling question, and your responses will help us understand a bit better about our audience and how we speak to the content throughout the rest of the webinar. So we want to hear from you. How do you classify the risk of freeze claims? Do you include them with non-weather water? Do you separate them out from non-weather water claims? Or do you treat them in some other way, or maybe you don't know, that's okay too. Enter your response and we'll reveal the results. All right, here are the results. 19% included in non-weather water, about double separate from non-weather water is how they treat freeze claims. And a lot of folks don't know that. That's okay, or maybe they treat them some other way. Rob, any surprises by the results from the survey?
No, not really. This is one of the incidences with this particular non-weather water peril where carriers are doing something different carrier to carrier. So this looks about right to me that there would be two definitely different groups in this.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, well, we looked at non-weather water frequency and severity over time. This data comes from the Insurance Information Institute, And we normalize it using inflation stats from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So on the left is frequency, and the frequency of non-weather water has remained fairly steady when you look back over the past 15 years or so. The number of claims normalized per 100 homes is up about 13% over this time frame since 2008. And on the right is severity, and these numbers are normalized for inflation. So even when we normalize for inflation, non-weather water severity is up 80% since 2008. At Zesty AI, we have conversations with many insurers, and this matches the stories we're hearing from carriers. These claims are a lot more expensive than they used to be. Part of this comes from building costs and labor inflation. Now, we normalize for CPI, but the cost of building materials and labor has outpaced overall inflation for the economy. So these costs are showing up here. But it's not inflation alone. When we also think about the architectural style of homes and the rise of open floor plans, resurfacing a water damaged wood floor, now instead of doing a single room, you might be resurfacing an entire level of a home. Another factor is the increase in the value of the contents of a home, like more expensive electronics. All these factors are coming together to drive much higher severity from non-weather water claims. So with that backdrop, let's get the policyholder perspective on this. While insurers are feeling the brunt of the rise in severity of non-weather water losses, recent headlines have shown that homeowners may not be up to speed on how things are changing in the market. All these headlines on this slide show a level of surprise from non-carrier stakeholders. At the top from the Insurance Journal, homeowners unprepared for non-weather water related damage. We'll go into some of our findings on this topic in just a minute. At the bottom is a bulletin put out by the Washington State Office of the Insurance Commissioner. Watch out for insurance policies that may limit your coverage for water damage. And then on the right, property damage attorneys coming out with new endorsement is worse yet, special limit for water damage. So as insurance carriers contend with the rise in severity of non-weather water losses, they need to respond to the demands and expectations of various stakeholders, policyholders, regulators. Transparency here is key, and working together with these parties. I'd love to have Rob weigh in here. Rob, you worked in the PNC space for over 18 years as an actuary and state manager. What's your experience with non-weather water? Did you ever lose any sleep over this peril?
It's definitely something that I was concerned about from time to time, and more so as time went on. So, as Sam was saying, I'd been an actuary and state manager at personal lines carriers for almost 20 years. And like many of you on this call, I was tasked with keeping up to date with loss developments in my states. And we all know that some years are worse than others, but we always have to explain why they're worse when that happens. So, sometimes that explanation is easy. There was a storm, there was a tornado, there was a wildfire. Very frequently, though, and especially in more recent years, I started ending up with the explanation of there's more non-weather water losses. So, of course, you get follow-up questions like, well, why are there more non-weather water losses and what can we do about them? And those were the questions that were very difficult to answer. We're pretty smart in this industry. You can talk with people in claims, in underwriting, actuarial, research departments, and a lot of people have a lot of interesting hypotheses about why non-weather water claims are increasing. You hear things like laundry is on higher levels in the house than it used to be. But I never encountered an overarching framework for how the non-weather water peril works. So when I came to Zesty AI, I was very excited to learn that we were in the middle of developing a non-weather water model. And I'm very excited to be chatting with you about it today.
That was great, Rob. Thanks for sharing your experience. Sorry you had to deal with that.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into our findings from our homeowner survey. What do policyholders think about non-weather water losses and their insurance coverage? So we surveyed 263 homeowners earlier this year, and we asked them a series of questions about their experience with non-weather water losses. The first question we asked them, what types of losses are typically covered in a standard homeowner's insurance policy? Well, we were pretty surprised by the results. On the left hand, we have the losses that are typically covered under a standard insurance policy. Sudden accidental pipe burst, damage from appliance failure, personal property, accidents like not shutting off your water faucets or your showers. So we were pretty surprised that at most, only about half of people even know these items are covered in a standard insurance policy. So clearly, the knowledge of what's in an insurance policy is not clear from a homeowner's perspective. And then on the right-hand side, we have included some options that are typically not covered under a standard insurance policy. Flooding, water and sewer backups, slow pinhole leaks over time, and the replacement of appliances that have failed. Now, many homeowners will buy additional coverage to cover these items, but we were surprised at how many homeowners actually thought these items are covered under their standard policy. Almost 50% of people thought that flooding and water and sewer backups are included in a standard policy. So the takeaway here, homeowners don't understand what's included and what might need to be added on. And we need to work with policyholders and through agents to educate the market. When you think about the noble purpose of insurance, helping policyholders protect their property and their assets, it's really about coming together with policyholders, protecting these important assets, and it's empowering the policyholders to take the steps needed to avoid losses. So we asked in our survey, what is their approach to prevent their home from experiencing non-weather water damage? And we gave them a lot of options. Maintaining the caulking, having the water heater inspected, shutting off water when traveling away from the home, inspecting water hoses, installing water shutoff valves or water sensors, and having pipes inspected by a licensed plumber. So guess what? There wasn't a single preventative measure that was taken by more than half of respondents. So there's a lot of room for improvement in how policyholders take action to prevent losses in the first place. Now, one thing that we've observed in the market is that more and more carriers are requiring a water shutoff device as part of an insurance policy, either as a discount or as a requirement to qualify for insurance, period. We're seeing these especially in higher value homes and homes that have experienced a water loss in the past. So we asked our survey panel, does your insurance policy require you to have an automatic water shutoff device in your home? And about 35% of respondents said yes, they are required to have this device. We went on to ask, have you installed that water shutoff device in your home? Only 60% of that 35% that were required to have the device have in fact installed it. So 40% of homeowners that are required to have a water shutoff device as part of their homeowner's insurance policy haven't even installed the device. So this is a big problem when carriers are relying on these water shutoff devices to prevent losses and they're not being installed. Two more questions we want to run through. First, many homes have high-risk features that are more likely to experience water losses. So we asked about a couple of home features that are correlated with either more frequent water losses or more severe water losses. Things like renovating bathrooms, having an open floor plan, having laundry located above the ground floor, and the presence of a swimming pool. Most respondents had at least one of these features, and many had multiple high-risk features. So when you have these high-risk features, it's even more important to take the preventative steps that we talked about earlier. And finally, we asked if folks know how old their water heater is. And about 3/4 of respondents did know how old their water heater is, which is great. But it was the follow-up question that introduced some concerns. How old is your water heater? Now, there are some very old water heaters out there. The median age of water heaters was 10 years old. And we all know that the average water heater only lasts about 10 to 12 years. So this is a problem. It would suggest the average water heater out there is nearing the end of its useful life. Even more concerning, when you look at the graph on the right-hand side, how old is your water heater? There's a significant portion of the water heaters out there that are 20 years old, 30 years old, even older. That means there's a high risk these water heaters could fail. And these are the older water heaters, those big tank-sized water heaters that could cause some major damage. The problem here, again, homeowner education. Just because the water heater still works doesn't mean it's not going to cause some major damage. So now's a good time to stop and hear from you again. As we get into the lessons, what we learned from examining non-weather water and weather water perils, we want to know how you're addressing this risk today. So our polling question is, how is your company currently approaching non-weather water risk today? Do you consider prior water claims for underwriting and or rating? Are you requiring water sensors, water shutoff devices in some cases, using inspections or self-inspections for non-weather water risk? Have you integrated a non-weather water risk model? or maybe none of the above. So you can select all that apply, and we'll look at the results in just a second. Okay, here are the results. Top by far, considering prior water claims. 80% of respondents here do consider prior claims. Then we have inspections or self-inspections requiring water sensors, and then about 19% have integrated a water risk model. Rob, any reaction to these survey results?
I don't think this one's very surprising to people. The insurance industry is certainly very accustomed to looking at prior claims history. So I think we rely very heavily on that, especially with this particular peril. And it looks like some carriers are definitely starting to move in a direction of requiring water sensors and using that in their underwriting plans and whatnot, and even starting to move in a direction of using non-weather water risk models in this particular peril. So yeah, this makes perfect sense.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. Well, now we're going to shift it to you. We want to share what Zesty AI has learned about the weather and non-weather water perils and leave you with some insights you can apply to your business. So Rob, take it away.
Thanks, Sam. So I think three things are becoming clear based on everything that Sam has shared with you so far today. First, it's clear that non-weather water losses are growing in importance. Second, there's a lack of consensus on how exactly to deal with those losses. And third, policyholders vary greatly in their knowledge about the non-weather water peril. So today, we're very excited to share details about Z-Water, our new cutting-edge non-weather water model. This sophisticated tool can enable you to manage differences in non-weather water risk on a property-by-property basis. With this model, you receive 2 scores for any property, one that's indicative of the frequency of non-weather water claims for a particular property, and another that's indicative of the likely severity of those claims. In developing this model, we assessed the importance of over 200 variables that seem to contribute to non-weather water claims. That assessment is based on a large historical database covering 6 years of losses from insurance carrier contributors. First, we leaned on our expertise processing image-based data to get a sense of the factors outside the home that could indicate the propensity for non-weather water claims inside the home. We then added data about home interiors to get a sense of the exposure to non-weather water losses. This includes data like open floor plans and number of bathrooms. And finally, we assessed data about how water is delivered to the house, as well as the quality of that water. For example, we determined if the water is hard or if it has high mineral variability. Altogether, these data enabled us to build a powerful model that predicts the overall non-weather water risk of an individual property. So let's get into the details about Z-Water. First, where the property is located makes a huge difference. The climate, the environment, the quality of the water, the quality of the water source too. These all make a huge difference in how well a property's water system can handle sediment and stress. Now, when you think about non-weather water, you think about the interior of the house. But we found there are actually many features visible from aerial imagery that are highly predictive of non-weather water losses. So here are some standout examples from the over 200 features that we assessed. First, using aerial imagery to examine roof penetrations gives a lot of information about the plumbing inside the home. So the location and number of plumbing vents can tell you a lot about what's going on inside. Next, the height of a building is predictive of severity. So using aerial imagery again to look at the number of stories of a home tells us a lot. Especially a leak on the second floor or third floor of a home will usually result in a much larger claim than one that happens in a ranch home. Aerial imagery also helps us understand about building density and about the HVAC equipment that's placed on the roof or around the home. And then being able to identify pools and hot tubs is important because all the infrastructure required to maintain those is where things can go very wrong and create non-weather water losses for you. And then finally, and this is not surprising, looking at the overall exterior maintenance of the home, things like the condition of the roof, whether there's debris on the property, these are also predictive of non-weather water losses. So let's look at some of the most powerful property-specific features that drive the frequency of non-weather water claims. So again, out of the over 200 features that we analyzed, here are 4 specific examples of what we're looking at. On this slide, the red line represents the frequency of non-weather water claims. And let's consider why these features lead to more non-weather water claims. On the top left-hand corner, we have number of bathrooms. This one's a little straightforward. It's not surprising that the more bathrooms there are in a house, the more likely the homeowners are to file a non-weather water claim. And in this case, claim frequency was as much as 36% higher with additional bathrooms. Moving to the right, we've got number of stories. Number of stories is a little trickier. We covered one part of that a little bit earlier. So the taller the building, the more surface area there is, especially in the vertical walls, which carry the water pipes. And secondly, the taller the structure, the more water pressure is required for the pipes to transport the water up to those higher floors. So the pressure differentials in the pipes are a cause of deterioration, and they can drive an increase in water claims. So in this case, claim frequency was as much as 21% higher with additional stories. Moving down to the bottom left, we have neighboring vegetation density. For this feature, we used aerial imagery and we looked at vegetation density within 30 feet of the house. This turned out to be a strong predictor of claims. One factor here is maintenance. So if an owner trims trees from overhanging the roof and the bushes around the property, they're also probably taking care of the inside of their home, right? Second, though, we know that root intrusion from the vegetation can interact with the water pipes leading to the home and cause damage that way. And in this instance, claim frequency was as much as 22% higher with increased vegetation density. And finally, here we have the presence of a pool. So we talked about this on the last slide. Having a pool on your property introduces mechanical equipment where things can go wrong. So if you have a pool, you're definitely at more risk of filing a non-weather water claim. And in this case, we saw that claim frequency was 15% higher with the addition of a pool to the property. So I think Sam has another poll question for you. I'll hand it back to you, Sam, for a moment.
Well, thanks, Rob. Final polling question. So Rob just went through a lot of very interesting features that drive frequency and severity of non-weather water claims. We want to know what stood out to you. So the polling question is, which feature for evaluating non-weather water risk has the most potential in your business? Water hardness and variability, temperature fluctuations, water infrastructure, number and location of plumbing vents, building density, pools and hot tubs, maintenance score, number of bathrooms. Let us know what stood out to you. We'll give you 20 more seconds to get your answer in. I see a lot of them coming in already. All right, the poll's closed. Coming up on top, number of bathrooms, feature with the most potential, followed by maintenance score, and then the water infrastructure information you shared, Rob. Any surprise here? I kind of interesting that bathrooms was the most interesting to folks.
Yeah, I mean, that is a very key data point to get access to. So number of bathrooms we think is certainly important. I'm glad that each of these got a vote. I believe most of them are things that I heard about, over the years as hypotheses. Oh, maybe this causes more water losses. Maybe this works that way too. So these are definitely things that people in general are talking about. Now, the important thing though is to understand, well, how powerful are each of these different features in an overarching model of how the peril works itself.
Exactly, and how they come together, which is
Yeah.
sort of what you're going to get into next. Go ahead and take it away, Rob.
Yeah, so now I want to talk about the power of this information. So Z-Water leverages insight from everything we've discussed today. We start with hydrology and climatology. We look at the quality of the water distribution network, the hardness of the water, temperature variability, the utility district quality. Then we layer in information from aerial imagery, and we round out the story with information from public records. With all of this information, you start to get a clear picture of the risk factors for both frequency and severity of non-weather water losses. And we've found a 5x lift in average annualized losses between the riskiest properties and the least risky properties. Now, keep in mind, this power doesn't come from just considering geographic differences like we do with rating territories. This power can only be achieved by looking at each property and its individual risk for non-weather water losses. Two properties right next to each other, they might have very different risk profiles depending on whether they have things like open floor plans or a pool in the backyard or how many bathrooms they have, and many other attributes that drive water losses. All of these are critical factors that matter at a property level, not just applied at a territory level. One important feature of this approach is that it results in a frequency score and a separate severity score. And you can make very powerful decisions for both rating and underwriting when you have information like this. With underwriting, for instance, you want to be concerned about properties with higher frequency scores. And within those, be especially concerned about properties with higher severity scores. So if you have a property with a low frequency score and a low severity score, well, that's a desirable property as far as non-weather water risk is concerned. You might want to straight through process those properties and save your time and resources for the more problematic ones on the other end of the spectrum. So if you get a property with a high frequency score and a high severity score, those are the riskiest properties regarding non-weather water. So you want to consider underwriting eligibility at all. And if you do accept the property, then you might want to require them to install a water shutoff sensor. And these are incidentally the properties that'll yield the best return in supporting and verifying the installation of such a water shutoff sensor. And then, of course, in the middle, you have the moderate risk properties. These are ones you might write with care. You might want to do more manual underwriting on these properties. You might want to consider water sensor requirements again, or maybe do an actual inspection of the property. But when you have these risk scores and you have risk buckets like this, you really can actually create automatic score-based thresholds and workflows based on your risk appetite and your business requirements. You'll also notice that with a severity score that ranges from 1 to 5 and a frequency score that ranges from 1 to 10, you end up with 50 different combinations of these scores. And this structure is very useful for rating with the Z-Water model. Knowing the expected frequency and severity of non-weather water losses at a particular property gives you 50 different price points to match the property's risk to a particular rate. So as we approach the end of our presentation, I wanted to revisit the power of intra-territory risk splitting. Here's an aerial image of a couple of houses in Dallas, Texas. Now, we know that Dallas, Texas has hard water in general. There's some significant variability in the hardness of that water. It has higher temperatures, but those temperatures do fluctuate significantly, and there's a lot of precipitation there. So that's the general story of Dallas that we know. But we've highlighted two adjacent homes in Dallas, Texas, and we can see how similar their non-weather water risk actually is. The house on the left has a low risk score for non-weather water losses. That's the one with the blue line going to it. And as you can see, their home maintenance is good. It's got a clean roof. It's free of debris. We also know that it's a simpler house. There are 3 roof penetrations. It's 1,600 square feet. It doesn't have an open floor plan. And we know that the laundry is in the basement. So these all result in a low likelihood of non-weather water losses. And even if there is one of those losses, the severity is likely to be lower anyway. So the house next door has a much higher risk. So you see the one with the pinkish red line there. It is not as well maintained. We can see right in the image, there are some roof issues there. There's more overhanging vegetation. There's a less orderly yard. There's many more roof penetrations there. There's more bathrooms. It's a bigger house. It does have an open floor plan, we know, and we know that the laundry is on the first floor rather than in the basement. So these features contribute to a high likelihood of non-weather water losses. And when those losses occur, they're also going to be larger losses than would happen on the house on the left. So knowing all this information and the likely non-weather water outcomes of both properties, you are likely to want to treat them very differently in your underwriting process and charge them significantly different rates. So let's conclude today by discussing actions you would take based on this information. First of all, I'm an actuary, so of course I have to talk about pricing first. This model enables you to split non-weather water risk to many discrete segments, each of which can have its own rate. Now, matching a rate to the actual non-weather water risk for a property is a fairly straightforward mathematical task. We also talked about defining underwriting and eligibility requirements, though. This information provides you with a very powerful way to enhance your risk selection and optimize your portfolio, whether that's with repricing, inspections, water shutoff sensor requirements. You also have a powerful tool to segment your product with varying deductible requirements, schedule modifications, targeted inspections based on the Z-Water scores. And inspections, for instance, those are a scarce resource. So you can use this information to allocate those resources to where they're needed the most. And lastly, with this information, you can achieve more efficient underwriting workflows because you're able to confidently straight through process a large segment of low non-weather water risk properties. So I hope you found today's presentation informative. I hope you learned more about the drivers of both non-weather water losses and their severity. I'm sure you've all been having conversations about non-weather water losses back at your companies. I hope that today you've gained some great direction for those conversations. This is the end of our presentation today, but we do have plenty of time for questions. So if you have any questions, we'll take as many as we can today.
Rob, that was great. I hope our audience took away a couple great nuggets on the drivers of both water losses and what drives the higher severity. I see the questions coming in. So now's your last chance to get your questions into the Q&A, and we're going to answer as many of them as we can as possible. If we run out of time, we'll follow up with you after the webinar to get your question answered. So while you're typing your questions in, we have an exclusive offer that's only available to the attendees of this webinar. It's exclusive access to our next research study. The state of the industry, 200 P&C leaders share how AI is transforming risk assessment. So scan that QR code and you'll learn from your peers about which risk assessment techniques are being embraced, what insurers are looking for in AI-based models, how transparency and regulatory adoption are perceived by carriers, and what risks are causing the most concern in the industry. So snap that QR code, download your copy of the research before it's available to everyone. Okay, with that, there are a lot of questions in, Rob. Buckle in. Here we go. First question, does Z-Water work on commercial structures? Is there a plan to include commercial structures? Well, I mentioned this earlier, and this question might have come in before we hit that, but water claims have different outcomes for residential versus commercial structures. So our model is focused on residential structures, and in the future, we'll expand it to the commercial space like we've done with all of our risk models. Okay, next one. Why are pools a variable in the model? Rob, you want to grab that?
Yes. The presence of pools or hot tubs also tends to increase claim frequency predictions. So that means if a pool or hot tub is at a property, they are more likely to file a claim. And that seems to be because of the additional equipment that's required to use a pool or a hot tub. And it's also just the actual usage of additional water seems to have an impact on future claims.
Great. All right, next one. How often is the imagery that feeds the data updated? Well, we work with all the top imagery providers, so the data is very fresh. Most properties are refreshed 3 to 4 times a year. In very rural areas, they might be frequent. It's less frequent, maybe once or twice a year. And then we use all the other data sources too. So like a tax assessment data would be updated typically monthly, and water quality data could be updated as often as daily. So we're taking the latest data that's available to calculate the risk scores. Okay, next one. Do you only provide back the risk scores? How do we know what the scores mean or why they're elevated?
I can take that one. So with all Zesty AI risk models, we provide scores, obviously, and those are reflective of the associated probability of a claim or severity of that claim. In addition, though, we know the importance of transparency. So our models are not a black box. All of our risk models have baked in explainability, basically, where we also are going to provide you the top reasons that are driving scores either higher or lower. So this extra detail is valuable both for your interactions with policyholders, as well as having some regulatory explainability for the variables that we're using.
Thanks, Rob. Another one for you. How do you confirm that your AI or predictive models do not have a disparate impact on a protected class like race, age, socioeconomic factors?
That's a great question. We proactively address bias testing, actually. So Zesty AI models, they all exclude any potentially discriminatory variables relating to socioeconomic profiles, either the homeowner or the location itself. So in the selection of variables, we let science guide our input data for model building. And we've established powerful research partnerships with scientific and engineering organizations to ensure that our input data is rooted in hard science with explainable relationships. So we mitigate the risk of bias there. And we also engage very proactively with regulators. So we maintain active engagement with key regulatory bodies. This fosters transparency and facilitates adherence with evolving regulations.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, next question. I see you're looking at the location of bathrooms and laundry, but why not if the home has a finished basement? Have you looked at this feature?
We actually did quite a bit of work looking at the number of finished floors in general, as well as looking at the impact of finished basements. And we saw no increase in frequency or severity with respect to finished basements. We do, however, see a pretty big jump in both frequency and severity when moving from 1-story to 2-story homes. And then beyond that, the effect is diminished as you add additional stories. But the big jump came from 1-story to 2 stories.
And then Ed had a kind of follow-on question. Did you see any meaningful differences in frequency and severity based on basement type, slab versus basement? And I think there's the same answer there. We didn't find any difference. We tested that and didn't see any difference.
Yeah.
All right. Keep rolling here. Wouldn't your hydrology and climatology features already be picked up in a territory-based rating plan?
We talked about this a little bit. So, like many of our risk models, Z Water incorporates location and climate based features. So, some of those may already be a part of your rating plan, possibly through like territory factors or zip codes or other rating tables. The challenge with traditional territory rating is that it often assumes a linear relationship with risk. So in reality, many factors interact in a complex multivariate way. Z Water leverages those interactions using a GBM to capture them, and it provides a custom property specific water risk score. So carriers, you can adjust your rating plans by flattening or tempering factors that Z Water already accounts for, just as you would with any new addition to your rating plan. So this ultimately allows you to combine your carrier specific knowledge about the policyholder, such as their insurance score, their claims history, with our insights about the property itself. And this results in much more accurate premium.
Thanks, Rob. You're on a roll here, so I'll keep the questions going to you. A couple people have asked sort of a similar question, so I'll try to bundle these together. Hillary asked this question. Joe asked this question. Rob, maybe tell us about our plans for regulatory and how we're going to make sure that this product will be approved.
Okay. Zesty AI has a strong track record working with departments of insurance. Our peril-specific risk models have been approved for rating and underwriting in 12 states so far, and many more states are pending approval. So unlike other model vendors, we actually we handle our filings in-house. We hold filing licenses across the United States, and this enables us to file models proactively, thus reducing the time to market. So when you're ready to adopt them, you can use them for rating and underwriting. Recently, we've also been interacting with the NAIC, which has a significant influence on the model review process in many states. So for Z Water specifically, we've applied the same model architecture and rigorous science-based approach that has earned approval from many DOIs. Our features are rooted in objective quantitative risk measures that have demonstrated statistically significant predictive power. So each model undergoes thorough testing. It undergoes thorough validation to ensure strong performance on unseen data. Transparency is at the core of that development process. So like I said before, there's no black box. We provide full documentation to regulators in partnership with your carrier, and we share critical insights about a property score with the carriers. So we've built mechanisms for. We've also, like, sometimes regulators will get concerned about this. We have mechanisms for you to override scores if you have to, or adjust the inputs to a score if you have to. So really, Z Water has been designed with regulation in mind, and we look forward to bringing it to key markets very soon.
Thanks, Rob. I'm going to give you a break here. I have a couple questions teed up for me. You've answered a ton of questions, and there are still more coming in, so we'll see how many we can get to. We'll try to get as many as we can. Next one, do you know what the average lifespan is for a tankless water heater? I've never heard that answer before. Well, you're asking the expert here. I just installed a tankless water heater a couple years ago. I did a lot of research in the market, and we at Zesty AI certainly looking at this area. There are a lot of different manufacturers out there, but the average lifespan is somewhere around 20 years. Some units will go 25 years or longer. Just really depends on the manufacturer, the quality of the unit. As we talked about, a traditional tank water heater is going to have 10, 12, maybe 15 years of life. So the tankless models are more durable, less prone to corrosion because they're not holding that water in the tank. It still needs to have the proper maintenance, though, dealing with hard water, annual servicing, to really extend the life of those water heaters. And then there was a question, what was the geographic spread of the N equals 263 survey, that homeowner survey that we talked about? So it was a nationwide survey trying to mimic census data and really get an even distribution across the country based on census data. Next, Stephen had the question, any data available on portion of fraud in the increase? I think he's talking about increase in frequency and severity of the claims. As a former claims adjuster, I noted an increase in vendor inflation and losses beyond the needed repairs. So, Stephen, you're certainly onto something. There's definitely impact of fraud. It's hard to know the exact breakdown of the split, what is fraud and what isn't. Some of the data shows that fraud has increased. At the same time, there are a lot of practices that have been implemented to monitor, track, and stop fraud, auditing, and then so there's some fraud in there. It's hard to know exactly what the proportion is. All right, next one. Has Zesty AI studied the effectiveness of automated water shutoff devices in avoiding non-weather water claims, reducing the frequency, as well as reducing the severity of claims? Does Z-Water factor the presence of a shutoff device in the model? Well, we're really excited about water shutoff devices. We think there's a lot of potential there. There's also a lot of fragmentation in the market, a lot of different types of devices with different data available. So the current version of the model is not leveraging this data in its predictions, but we're investigating and investing in this area, working with multiple players in the space to validate the effectiveness of the models and then validate the impact on the predictive power of the model. So more to come there. All right, what is the geographic coverage for your Z-Water score or the hit rate by state? Is it available for most properties in most states? So the answer, yeah, it's available across the continental United States. Our hit rate is above 95%. And so we are going to be able to hit most properties in most states. Well, I want to get folks out of here on time. We didn't get to every question. If we have your name with your question, we will follow up with you after the webinar and make sure we get your question answered. Thank you so much for the thoughtful questions. What a great audience. Thank you. Rob, if you take us to the last slide, we'll close this out. Thank you so much for attending this webinar. So you'll get a follow-up email with a recording of the webinar. And if you ask a question that we didn't get to, we'll provide you with a response. Don't forget to download your copy of the State of the Industry Research Study. And we want your feedback. Did this content resonate? How can we better tailor content to meet your needs in the future? Fill out the Zoom survey at the conclusion of the webinar. And finally, we'd love to stay connected. Rob and my contact information is below. So thank you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your day.